How many of you have ever been within petting distance of a sheep? And I don't mean at a petting zoo. I mean on a real farm, real ranch, okay? They are not the cute, cuddly creatures of children's bedtime stories, are they? They smell. The color of their coats ranges from black to gray, and those that happen to be white are usually quite dirty. They are not that intelligent. They are loud, pushy, and selfish, and if you turn your back on one, you're liable to get knocked down. They do not perform tricks. They do not entertain us, and you really missed it in the first service while we had the video screen up. We had this hilarious video of a sheep stuck in a tire swing, trying to get out of it, with the rest of the flock just watching him. So I'll try to have Mike post that on the Facebook page so you all can see it. About the only good thing I can say about sheep is that they taste good and that their wool is warm. So we're talking about an animal whose only two purposes in life seem to be being eaten and being worn. And yet time and again, the biblical writers call us sheep. In our relationship with God, they call us sheep. And that's not a very flattering metaphor, is it? Considering what we just discussed, and if you had seen the video of the sheep in the swing, you'd really almost feel offended. Time and again, they refer to us as sheep. And what we see when you look at the shepherd-sheep imagery throughout the Bible is you see a relationship that is extremely close and extremely intimate. And we're going to read the first 6 verses of John chapter 10. That's page 1666 in your Pew Bible. And while you're looking, there's just a little background. Jesus, just prior to this, has healed a man of blindness. But he did it on the Sabbath. And so the Pharisees, the established religious leaders, were upset because he had worked on the Sabbath. They were accusing him of breaking one of the laws of Moses. So this is part of his response. Very truly, I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. He's talking about them. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. He's talking about himself. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. The relationship between a shepherd and his sheep is so close that the shepherd knows every sheep by name. It is so intimate that the sheep know the shepherd's voice and will respond to him immediately, while at the same time running from anyone whose voice is unfamiliar. The metaphor doesn't sound so bad now, does it? It doesn't sound so bad. It's a good thing to be a sheep in the eyes of God. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. And by picking a weak, defenseless, often completely helpless animal to represent us, the biblical writers knew exactly what they were doing. Well, now Jesus is talking here. He's not giving a lecture on first century Near Eastern animal husbandry. He's talking about himself, and he's talking about the Pharisees. But in verse 6, we see the Pharisees didn't understand what he was saying, so he had to expand his illustration. Let's read verses 7 through 16. Therefore Jesus said again, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. That's a real zing at the Pharisees. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Another jab at the Pharisees. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. There again, a jab at the Pharisees. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen, and I must bring them in also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. Jesus had talked about thieves and robbers and strangers and hired hands, people who were more concerned for their own interests than for the interests of the sheep. And as I said, this was an obvious reference to the Pharisees and to the other religious leaders who far too often put their own concern for power and money and prestige ahead of that of the people of Israel. And these religious leaders were commonly thought of as the flock, or as the shepherd of the flock of Israel. And here Jesus says, no, you're thieves and you're robbers and you're hired hands who do not have the best interests of the sheep in mind. And so over against these false shepherds, Jesus presents himself as the good shepherd. He's the good shepherd, the ultimate shepherd. And he explains what it means for us that he is the good shepherd. First, what it means is that the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. This is something only the good shepherd can do. A hired hand may lose his life in the defense of the flock, but that just leaves the flock vulnerable and open to attack and thievery. And Jesus, who says this himself, he did not lose his life. He gave it up voluntarily. He said, nobody takes it from me. I give it up voluntarily. And only the good shepherd can lose his life for the sheep. This is the ultimate act of the good shepherd. Listen to what he says in verses 17 and 18. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. This is the ultimate act of the Good Shepherd. Jesus died so that we can live. This is the cornerstone of the gospel message that we preach. And one writer says that to be a part of Jesus' flock is to know oneself as someone for whom Jesus Christ is willing to die. That's the ultimate perk of being a sheep. I mean, compare that to the imagery that we talked about in the video we talked about. Knowing that you are someone for whom Jesus Christ died, that is the ultimate perk of being considered a sheep. The second thing it means for us that Jesus is our good shepherd is that Jesus knows us by name. And we, the true sheep, recognize his voice. You might have noticed during the prayer, I asked God to teach us to listen, because it's much easier to speak to him than it is to listen for him. It can be very difficult to hear the voice of Christ. But when we hear it, the true sheep respond. They run to him, and they follow him wherever he goes. Barbara Brown Taylor wrote a book called The Preaching Life, and in it she says, if sometimes you have trouble hearing the voice of your shepherd, be patient with yourself. Because sometimes it sounds like a cluck, and sometimes it sounds like a whistle. Sometimes it sounds like a love song, and sometimes it sounds like a curse. It is not a voice that usually speaks in words, let alone complete sentences, but it is something that you will usually hear sometime between your getting up and your lying down, leading you beside still waters, restoring your soul. An obvious reference to the 23rd Psalm, the most famous shepherd imagery in the entire Bible that begins with, the Lord is my shepherd. And so when we hear the shepherd's voice, what does Jesus say the sheep do? They run to him, and they follow him wherever it is he goes. The third thing it means for us that Jesus is our good shepherd, it means that there is room for everybody in Jesus' flock. In verse 16, he says, I have other sheep that are not of this pen, but I'm going to bring them in, and they'll know my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. Do you know who he's talking about when he says, I have sheep that are not of this pen? Keeping in mind, he's talking to the Pharisees and other Jewish people. He's talking about us. He's talking about the Gentiles. This was actually a racial statement, but racial in a good sense. Up until this point, the people of Israel thought that they alone were God's flock. Now, they shouldn't have thought this, because all the way back, before they even existed, all the way back to Abraham, before Abraham had any children, while he was an old man and his wife was an old woman and they were beyond childbearing years, God says, I'm going to make you a father of many nations. And I am going to bless all the nations of the world through you. So they should have seen this coming. Jesus didn't die. The Good Shepherd didn't die only for the people of Israel. He died for anyone who would believe in him. Fortunately for us, the Good Shepherd is very generous with his love. Well, as I said, sheep and shepherds are foreign to most of us. I know some of you raised your hands and said you've been close to them. That may have been a one-time occasion. If we want a lamb chop, we go to Longhorn Steakhouse. If we want a wool coat, we go online and we order it from LLB. But what was true of the people of Israel and the people of Jesus' day is still true for us. We are sheep. And we carry all the baggage that goes along with the title of being a sheep. We are stubborn. We are selfish. We are weak. We are prone to get dirty. We are defenseless. We are not always that bright. And we are easily misled. We need the Good Shepherd. We need a Good Shepherd watching over us and taking care of us and protecting us. Jesus mentions hired hands and strangers and thieves and robbers, and he mentions the wolves that come to attack the flock of sheep. Well, it seems like every day we're surrounded by wolves. If I had each of you take 30 seconds and tell me what's going on in your life right now, we'd come up with 600 different things that people are facing. Because every day somebody here is facing depression or anxiety or illness or job problems or money problems or marital problems or problems at school or spiritual doubt. I can keep going and going. As the church, we face the wolf of apathy from the inside, and from the outside we face attacks from our culture, cultural permissiveness. We face the intrusion of political ideology into our faith. We face all kinds of wolves. And that's why we need the Good Shepherd, to watch over us and to care for us and to protect us. But the Good Shepherd, like every shepherd, doesn't just take care of his sheep during the time of crises. It isn't as if the shepherd sleeps until he hears a wolf already tearing into the pack. The shepherd stays alert, always watching for the wolves. So there are day-to-day responsibilities for a shepherd that are just as important as those times of crises. And to help take care of those day-to-day needs, as well as the times of crisis, Jesus appoints under-shepherds. Now, we're still in our series on the characteristics of a healthy church. And Stephen Macchia says that the sixth characteristic of a healthy church is servant leadership development. And this is what he says. The healthy church identifies and develops individuals whom God has called and given the gift of leadership and encourages them to become servant leaders. Pastoral leaders and lay leaders within a church are not to seek out positions for the sake of title or for power or to get your own way. We are under shepherds. Jesus Christ has personally chosen you if you are a leader, or if you are a leader in waiting and maybe just don't know it yet. Jesus has chosen you to help shepherd the flock right here in Ledgewood. And as an under shepherd, our ultimate example is Jesus Christ, the Good Shepherd. That means we have to lead like him. So, leaders, we must lead like Christ by being willing to sacrifice for other people. Jesus says that the Good Shepherd laid down his life for the flock. We may not have to lay down our lives, Leaders in other countries do, Christian leaders do, not in the U.S., but we may have to lay down our calendars and our watches. We may lose some weekends and some evenings tending to the flock. We may have to cancel some plans in order to take care of the flock. You may spend time in prayer and Bible study and in service and receiving training that you would have rather spent doing something else. Not always, but sometimes. As leaders, we have to lay down our rights, many of them. Leaders are targets for angry people. And people will take out their marital problems and other issues on you. People who are unhappy with the direction the church is going will take that out on you. Well, they'll mostly take it out on me, but you will get caught in a crossfire. And it makes me think of, there's an old Far Side cartoon. Two deer are talking, they're standing up, and one of them has a target on his chest and his belly. And the other one says, "That's a bummer of a birthmark, Hal." As a leader, you walk around with a target right on your chest. And while you may have the right to defend yourself, a good under-shepherd turns the other cheek, simply because that is what Jesus Christ did when he died on the cross. That was the ultimate act of turning the other cheek. We have to lay down our egos. Anyone who becomes a leader for recognition or for power or to steer the church in any direction other than God's direction, that leader is no better than a Pharisee, whom Jesus called thieves and robbers who have no concern for the flock, but only intend to steal and to kill. Our egos, the part of us that desires recognition, the part of us that desires affirmation, that has to die if we're going to be under shepherds. And Jesus showed us the death of his ego in the garden the night he was arrested, when he said, "Father, I want your will to be done, not mine, no matter what the cost is." As under shepherds, we must lead like Christ by establishing relationships. Jesus says, "I know every sheep in my flock by name, and my sheep know my voice." That is relationship. Leadership within the church is not authority-based in the way we tend to think of it. There is an authority that comes from being called by God to be a leader, but that leadership is carried out through relationship. So leaders, I'm going to repeat something I said last Sunday. Eat with people. Share meals. Spend time with the people that God has called you to care for and learn their stories. Pray with them. Talk with them. Teach them. Counsel them. Advise them. Grieve with them. Celebrate with them. Go to a high school soccer game with them. Invite them to your family get-togethers. Leaders, you have got to invest yourself in the other members of this flock. And then lastly, we have to lead like Christ by having a big view of the flock. Jesus said, "I have other sheep that are not in this pen, but I'm going to bring them in." Leaders, consider that you have sheep outside the four walls of this sanctuary. Remain vigilant for the lost sheep and introduce them to the Good Shepherd. Remain vigilant for the hurting and tend to them. Remain vigilant for the hungry and the thirsty, literally and metaphorically, and feed them and water them. Remain vigilant for those who are stuck. If you had seen the video of the sheep in the tire, you can see how easily a sheep can get stuck, and help set them free. Remain vigilant for the scared and the frightened, and comfort them. Remain vigilant for the threatened and protect them. When you became a leader in this church, I'm sure you thought, as leaders in most churches think, "Well, I'll have to go to a meeting or two a month. That's all it's going to cost me." Think again. You are under shepherds. You have been called by Christ, appointed by Christ to help take care of this flock here in Ledgewood. And that's whether you are a leader by position or a leader by personality. Either way, You have been appointed as an under-shepherd to help take care of this flock right here in Ledgewood. And our example as under-shepherds is the good shepherd, Jesus Christ. Now, he's more than our example. If he were just an example, then this sermon would be nothing better than a pep talk that a football coach might give to his players before they run out onto the field. That Jesus is more than our example. Jesus is our strength. He is our courage. He is our stamina. He is our wisdom. He is our love. Leaders, we can under-shepherd others because we know that the good shepherd is taking care of us. Amen.